My 29F fiancé 29M has ghosted me since he found out about my past. This happened a week ago and I have not heard from him since. I have tried texting him, calling him, went to his apartment, went to his sister's house. I can't find him and everybody is telling me that they haven't heard from him either. Everybody except his brother, who obviously did not get the memo like everyone else did, to lie to me. He actually told me that Greg, not his real name, doesn't want to see or speak to me. A brief rundown on how we got here. We met 3 years ago at a church function. Yes, I know, Reddit hates religion, but it is what it is. I have had a very rough life when it comes to men, so I really don't engage any of them in conversation other than just briefly if I can get by with it. However, I was listening to Greg speak to a group of people about a book that I had just read, so I stood there and listened to him. After he was done talking, the group kind of hung around a little and I asked him questions about the book. He answered every single one, and the more he talked the more I was attracted to him. Now this may not sound like much, but it was the first time I was actually attracted to a guy since high school. As I said, rough experience, but suffice it to say, after I left high school I got involved with a very bad crowd. I turned to drugs, and when my family finally had all they could take out of me when I was 19, they kicked me out. I don't blame them for this, by the way, because I stole from them to feed my drug addiction. They tried many times to help me, but when I stole a very large sum of money from them and spent it on heroin, they had enough. Living friend house to friend house, couch surfing for about 6 weeks, but still a junkie, I got caught stealing from them as well. I was homeless for 2 weeks, honestly lived on a park bench for a couple of days. I decided to stop, RT stripping and everything that goes along with it. In other words, I was doing private parties, private dances, and yes, it quickly turned into just being paid for sex. I honestly don't even remember a lot of that time, because whenever I wasn't working I was either high or working to get high. I did this for a few years. On my 23rd birthday I overdosed. I had odds several times, but not to the point of not breathing, and I stopped breathing. The paramedics honestly saved my life because they did CPR on me and brought me around. I was in the ICU for 3 days on a ventilator and I had several fours. While I was in the ICU, a preacher came by to see me. He was just a minister who goes and visits with families and patients. He came to me and he spoke to me about how life has a higher purpose. He said a whole lot more, but I won't bore you with it. Needless to say, whether it was him, me being fed up with my life, or God, I don't know, but it really moved me, and when I got out of ICU I asked them to help me get off of all of the drugs. It worked. I have been clean since the day I left and I have never had a single desire to go back to that. It wasn't easy at first, but every day got better. I got a job, I reconnected with my family, and then I met Greg. I had never been in love, not even in high school. But after going on just a few dates I was head over heels for him. On our 1-year anniversary he asked me to marry him, but with the idea that it would be a year till the wedding. I happily agreed, and it has been the best time of my life. I felt the warmth every single day of his love. But then my mom and dad and I were making wedding plans. They wanted to pay even though I told them not to, and one day while we were talking, what did Greg know about my past? They were meaning, did he know about the drugs? My mom and dad don't fully know how far I sunk. The drugs were bad enough. My mom said that if Greg never asked, then I really should just keep it to myself. That I was a different person and what was in the past should just stay in the past. My dad, however, said something that actually made sense at the time. I kind of regret listening to him now though. He said that even though I had changed, who I was still a part of who I am, and hiding the past really is like lying. If Greg loved me, then he wouldn't care about the past, but if he ever found out on his own or some other way, then he might not be so forgiving because he might consider it a lie. So last weekend I got all of the courage I could muster and decided to tell him everything. He knows things my parents don't know, and now I feel very much betrayed. At first he thought I was joking, but when I assured him I was not, he kind of got quiet, and then he told me that he appreciated the honesty. He didn't know how he felt and that he needed time to think. That has been a week now. I let him go Saturday through Saturday with only texting him a couple of times, just letting him know that I still loved him and making sure he was okay, and if he had any questions to ask me. Well, he never responded, and it has been a week since I've heard from him. I don't know what to do. He has been my rock since we got together. Times I've been down he has picked me up. When I've been sad he has made me laugh. I truly hope I have not hurt him. I think that would be the worst thing of all. I know my past life was disgusting, but it's been 6 years and since I've been completely out of that life. I was in another city, actually even in another state. So there is no way that past life can come back to see me here. I made no friendships or relationships during that time, so there is nobody going to seek me out. Can anyone please tell me what I can do or say that will with him? I really love him with all of my heart and will do anything to make this right. Update 1. The title of the post was really inaccurate on my part because he did get in touch with me and we met for several hours on Sunday. So he didn't ghost me. He never intended to ghost me, and his family did not lie for him. In fact, before we had time to talk at church, his brother came to me and apologized for the way he handled my phone call. He said he clearly did not understand his brother's wish to be alone to think, and on his own interpreted that to mean he didn't want to talk to me. The rest of his family had no idea there was any significant problem and did not know where he was because he went away for the week, told them to only contact him for any emergencies. Obviously they knew something was up but had no idea. So the ghosting part was a combination of miscommunication and, well, honestly just anxiety and impatience on my part. We both apologized over that and moved on. Anyway, we met at church for morning service and I got there first and went and sat in our usual spot, and he got there just as the service was starting, but he came over and sat down beside me and we shared a quick smile as the service started. I was dying inside. After service was over, people were shaking hands talking. This is when his brother came to me to apologize, and while we were talking he slipped away and talked to a few other people. I have a feeling this was planned, but whatever. He came back over and asked how I was and I almost lost it, but I held it together and said I was okay, but obviously I was tearing up as we were talking. He asked if I wanted to talk now or later, and I just wanted to get it over with because if he was going to break up with me I just wanted it to be done and over with so I could go home and start the grieving. So I just said I'm ready. He said he really wanted to talk somewhere private and asked where I would prefer to go, and all I could think of was my place so I didn't have to drive when it was all over with. He followed me home and he came inside and said that he really wanted this to be civil, not a good sign. By this time I was already a bundle of nerves, so I just blurted out, "Are you going to leave me?" Obviously I'm crying as I say this. What he said next left me with a lot of hope because I really thought this was a done deal. He said that a lot of what happens going forward would depend on what I said that day with him and how much I wanted to tolerate from him. That last part really confused me, but I just was so relieved that he didn't say yes that I basically collapsed into my chair and told him that I was ready to do whatever it took. He then said that if that was the case then he would ask for two things from me, and that was honesty and patience. He started off apologizing to me for not being a better man. Well, that was all I could take, when he said that the floodgates came open. Here was this wonderful man who I basically lied to and dropped probably what I can only imagine from a man's point of view being one of the worst things you could ever tell a future spouse, and he was apologizing to me. I had to hug him and tell him not to apologize to me. He held me as I cried for a few minutes, but then tried to gather myself to listen to him. He went on to say that he had a horrible week. He said he had to come face to face with a lot of his own insecurities, jealousies and prejudices. He also said that he learned something about himself and he did not like what he learned. He said up until I told him my story that he did not realize that he was very possessive and had a jealous streak. He talked a lot about it, but I'll skip that because it was really personal, and well, this is already going to be the length of a book. He then asked me if I was willing to put up with him having some very probing questions and some very personal comments about them. Again, I said I was going to do whatever it took. So he asked the following questions. 1. Did I use protection every time? 2. Did I have any interaction with anyone sexually in the city we live in now? 3. Did I have any idea how many people I had sex with? 4. Have I been tested for any sexually transmitted diseases, and, if so, when was the last time and did I keep records of it? 5. Am I willing to be tested again and even again in the future? 6. Did I ever have sex with anyone without them being a customer? 7. What types of drugs did I take? 8. When was the last time I took drugs? 9. Do I feel any need or desire to take drugs or any other substance since this incident occurred? 10. How can I guarantee to him that I won't in the future turn back to drugs? 11. Does sex have any real meaning for me and do I enjoy it, or is it just something I do now to be close to him? 12. How much money did I steal? 13. Did I pay back the money? 14. Have I ever stolen any money or anything else without it being for drugs? 15. How can I guarantee him that I won't steal from him in the future? This took several hours to answer because I had to often stop to compose myself, but I answered every one of his questions as honestly as I could. He often told me that I didn't have to answer them if I didn't want to and kept apologizing for asking, but he said that to go forward with anything he knew that he had to know or he just wouldn't be able to. He then listed out his concerns and asked if I really wanted to work with him on them and he would understand if I didn't want to. I said I wouldn't be here if I didn't want this. So his concerns were as follows. A. He is afraid that if times get rough in the future for whatever reason I might steal from him or his family. Honestly, I was surprised by this as this was not something I thought would be an issue, but it was the first thing he talked about. Now, to be fair, his family owns a business. They are not rich, but they are not poor either, so I guess he's worried when he takes over I might steal. B. In his words, he has an irrational fear that once a junkie always a junkie, and he said he doesn't know how strong he is and it would kill him if we stayed together, and I sunk back into that world. C. His fear that sex would be an issue going forward. He said that he has had horrible intrusive thoughts all week. The fact that I have been with so many people and done so many different things that nothing would ever be special, and ultimately he was afraid he would become bitter because he would feel like we were just having sex for him, and that knowing that I would just be participating would really make his desire to have sex with me drop significantly. Again, I listened to him and answered every concern, to what I could. He said he knew a lot of this was nothing I could ever really guarantee, but he just had to talk about it. I told him that I understood and I had already suspected some of this would come up. As I said, we spent several hours going over this stuff. We had to take a couple of breaks so that way our emotions would not get the better of us. He really went through the range of emotions himself, but I knew I had to let him if I wanted this to work. He told me he was willing to stay and try to make this work because he really loved me. Obviously my heart leapt at this and I cried again. You would think with everything I've been through I would be tougher than this. But he said that he did not feel like we could go through with the wedding as scheduled, and that in all honesty he would like to end our engagement and stay dating, exclusive of course, for a while. He said in all honesty he felt like while he believes me and feels like he knows me, he wants to take the time to look at this from a new perspective. This is where the part about feeling like he didn't really know me come in. I took off my ring to give it to him, and for the first time he broke down and cried. He told me to put it back on and that he just wants to postpone the wedding, not end the engagement. I told him we could do whatever he thought we had to do. He said we are just going to tell people we are going to postpone the date due to scheduling conflicts, and we would let them know a new date. Then we had to decide what we were going to be telling family. He said from his side of the family that he is going to tell them that he was feeling pressured at work and that he got upset over a misunderstanding about time away. I told him that I would say whatever he wanted. He said it was best to not tell anyone else about my past except for our minister, who we are going to start going to couples counseling with. We both agreed to this. As to my family, well, this is where the one problem we had that day came up. He just assumed my family knew. I told him they only know about the drugs and stealing. He said that he thought my parents should know because they are paying for the wedding and it will cause some problems canceling events and stuff, and he did not want them to think this was just because I used drugs years ago. It wasn't a deal breaker for him, he said, but it was something he felt was right, but would abide by whatever I thought was best. I really do not want to tell my parents. What I did was bad enough, stealing and doing drugs, but if they knew I stripped and prostituted myself, I don't think I could ever look them in the eye again, and they have been so wonderful to me since I've come back. So in conclusion, this ended better than I ever dreamed possible. Yes, I know he has a diminished view of me. He really was upset that I waited so long to tell him, but I had to know that this was inevitable, and he said once he gets over the initial shock he will try his best to never bring it up again. He truly is a wonderful man, and I am so very lucky that God put him in my life. Secondly, to answer this here. If I wanted to stay with him, I had to let him ask me those questions. He gave me every opportunity to shut it down, and even several times while we were talking he asked if I wanted him to stop. He was hurting, by his own words, from his own insecurities. Update 2. When last I left off, he had asked me to tell my parents because he was afraid that they would think he was being overly critical of a previous drug habit. But he also told me that he wouldn't make that a deal breaker, he just thought it would be a good idea. Well, after thinking about it more, I just felt like I did not want to have to tell my parents that part of my life. I believed with all of my heart that they would have supported me, but I just did not want to go through all of the emotions of telling them. I explained it to him and he was fine with it. Said that he respected my thoughts on it and would never say a word to them. I decided on my own to tell them that we were postponing the wedding. I told them that after we had talked that he wanted to stay together and that he just wanted more time to think about things. I thought that this was best as I didn't want him to be there to have to explain anything, because if something would have come up I did not want him to feel trapped. I told them. They were disappointed obviously, but they understood. He had given me money to give them to pay back their deposits, but they said that they did not want it and for us to keep the money. I thought that was the end of it. Was I ever wrong? He came over for Thanksgiving dinner. He had lunch with his family. I was invited but could not attend due to not getting off till late from work and then having to help my mom make dinner here. He got to my parents' house around 4 or so and we ate dinner at 5:30. My parents, both sets of grandparents and several cousins were there. Dinner went fine. We ate and everybody was having a good time until my cousin, who is several years younger than me, 12, asked when we were getting married. There was a long, it seemed forever, awkward silence, and he just sat there looking at me for guidance. He spoke up and said probably next summer, to which my mother's mother heard this, and obviously nobody had told them that the date was off. Well, she proceeded to ask if she had the dates wrong in her calendar, to which my mom quickly jumped in to just say that there were scheduling conflicts. Well, that should have been, ain't it? But instead of accepting that, my grandmother starts to ask what scheduling conflicts, if it was the church or minister she was going to get this straightened out. This went on for a good half hour and I could just tell by the look on his face he was sick of it. He never said a word, but he looked almost very upset. Finally my family starts to leave at about 8:30 or so, and after everybody says their goodbyes, he and I go back to the living room and sit on the couch. I apologize profusely to him and he says he's fine, but I can tell he is not really fine, but he is starting to be less tense. My parents come back in from the front porch after telling their parents goodbye, and they sit down and my dad apologized to both of us, saying that our family means well but sometimes can be overbearing. The three of us laugh, but I notice my mom not laughing. My mom proceeds to take a bad situation that was under control and actually ending and decides to dump buckets of gasoline on it. She said that she felt bad for her mom because she thought she was upset because my grandfather, my mom's dad, is having health issues and they were afraid that he wouldn't live to see my wedding. Here is where it goes to hell. She said it was silly to postpone things over a drug addiction that hasn't been a problem for several years. My boyfriend just sat there, but I could physically both see and feel him tense up. I was holding his hand. My dad spoke up and he and my mom started arguing over it, and by what they were saying to each other I could tell they had talked about this after I told them. No surprise really, and I could tell that even though my dad was trying to be polite and make my mom shut up, that he pretty much felt the same way. I just could not take it anymore. I felt absolutely horrible for Greg. He not only had to sit there for my grandparents, he now was having to sit there for my parents, and everybody is blaming him for all of this. It wasn't fair to him. I spoke up and told my parents that I had to talk to them and that they needed to stop arguing and stop blaming Greg for any of this. He squeezed my hand, indicating to me that I should stop. I looked at him and he shook his head no. I told him that no, this was not fair to him, and ultimately it wasn't fair to them either because they were blaming him for the wrong reasons. Obviously this got their attention. I went ahead and told them that after they had kicked me out of the house I had no home, no job, no education, no skills, no nothing. I only told them that I became an exotic dancer. I just could not bring myself to tell them more. But they are not dumb. My mom immediately gasped and started to cry. My dad just sat there dumbfounded and tried to calm my mom down. My mom, after being basically hysterical for a few minutes, apologized to Greg. She said she had no idea and that he was a wonderful man for staying with me even knowing that. Not too sure how I feel about that statement, but I guess in the end she was coming from a good place, I think. But the main thing was that it did take the blame off of him. My dad welcomed him to the family by saying this was just a typical Thanksgiving, trying to be funny. I asked Greg if he would mind if I talked with my parents and I would see him on Friday. I walked him out and we kissed goodnight. I told him how wonderful I thought he was and he told me that I didn't need to tell them that he wasn't going to say anything. I said I knew he wouldn't, but it was just going to never get better with them unless they knew the truth. I went back in and spent the next several hours talking with my parents. Needless to say, it was heartbreaking on several levels. My dad openly cried and I have never seen that. He blames himself for this. He said that he never should have kicked me out, that he ruined my life. No matter what I said or did, I could not console him. My mom tried as well, but nothing was working. We all went to bed and I was woke up by my mom panicking, calling 911. My dad was having chest pain. The ambulance came and said he was having a heart attack and took him to a hospital that specializes in heart problems. My dad looked horrible and I was scared more than I ever have been. I called Greg and he came and picked my mom and me up and drove us to the hospital. They would not let us back to see him as they rushed him into surgery, and the doctor came out telling us that the ambulance most likely saved his life by recognizing what was happening and that a surgeon was with him putting in stents and had basically already used like a plunger or something to get rid of a blood clot they found. We called our minister and he was there within a half an hour. My dad is scheduled to come home tomorrow. He looked great tonight and said he felt perfectly fine. Greg has been a rock for both me and my mom. When he left to go get us food, my mom actually told me that I need to make sure to keep him because the only man she knew that was any better was my dad. I am just grateful that my dad is going to be okay. Greg said tonight when he dropped me off at home that life is never dull with me. We both laughed. I have to try and help my dad realize that what he did was tough love and that he can't blame himself for my poor choices. He didn't just kick me out after the first, second, or even 23rd time. They tried for a couple of years to reach me, but I wasn't having it. I spoke with my minister about therapy for my dad and he said that he will speak to him as his minister and recommend another therapist if my dad is open to it. Now on to second story. Invited my childhood guy friends for a horror movie night at my parents' house, now worrying they'll expect more than friendship. I'm 17F and I'm having a sleepover with a few guys who are 17 to 18 tomorrow, just to watch horror movies. I didn't intend for it to be just them, but none of my girlfriends could come because of various reasons. My parents weren't thrilled about hosting a sleepover with just them, because we're all sleeping in one room, but they agreed to it because they know I'm not interested in any of them. I've known them all for years, and had a sleepover with one of them before. I also dated one of them when we were 15, but I broke it off after a few weeks. Overall, we're all pretty good friends, and that's all I want, a fun sleepover with my friends. It literally just clicked with me that they might interpret this as something different. Will they? I know Reddit is male dominated, so tell me if you were one of those guys, would you expect anything else to happen? Should I clarify with them beforehand that it's just a sleepover, or am I overreacting? Edit for additional details. As of right now, 2 of us will take the couch, 1 takes the recliner, and 1 sleeps on the floor. I will probably take the recliner. The room isn't my bedroom, it's the sitting room and it's very close to my parents' bedrooms. If I feel uncomfortable, I will leave them to sleep there and I'll sleep in my bedroom. Also, what I mentioned about last sleepover was like 2 minutes of very tame drunk messing around with one of the guys, but I changed my mind and he stopped and we both agreed to move on the next day because we're chill like that. He is very respectful and I've known him since I was a kid. Honest to God, I trust him more than my brother. Edit 2 for a little more additional detail. There will be no alcohol or drugs involved at all. I also should mention that the other guys are all also autistic or similarly neurodivergent. I'm not going to get taken advantage of intellectually, and the notion that I would be is a little insulting. Update 1. Hey, here's an update about the sleepover for those who wanted it. It just ended, everyone's left now. So, fortunately for anyone who was genuinely concerned for me, 2 girls ended up coming. It was a last-minute decision, so they were a few hours late, but even without them there I somehow survived. Overall, it was a great night. We watched a good few absolutely horrific movies. We ate a bunch of shit and laughed obnoxiously loud and snuck out of the house for a midnight walk. There was no drugs or alcohol involved apart from vapes because some of my friends are addicted. And most importantly for some of y'all, I slept in my room. It was more for convenience than anything, and also because the 2 girls wanted to sleep up there and I didn't want anyone sleeping in my room without me present. I'm kind of glad I did because the sitting room absolutely stank this morning. I did doze off in the sitting room with just the guys there while the girls were already sleeping in my room, But they just woke me up and made me finish watching the movie with them because they're assholes. I'm confident that it would have went fine even if it had been just me and those guys. They're chill. Thanks to everyone who left kind and reassuring comments. I was only ever a bit nervous that the vibe would be weird, but it wasn't. Smile. I'm not even going to address the wide variety of other comments I got, but rest assured I stopped reading them after I started getting threatening DMs. Lamau. Love this website.